We are going to talk about the audience today. And I think when we start talking about the audience, it's important for us to think about theater not being complete until we have an audience present. Audiences compose the theater. They bring with them their personal stories, their fantasies, their scars, their view of the world to the theatrical experience. Theater is live. Unlike radio or silent film, even the talking films, television, or even the new live interactive three-dimensional displays at theme parks, theater has continued to thrive and even survive despite these amazing technological advances. I think that is due to the live nature of the audience and that exchange that happens when performers are in the presence of spectators and when spectators are in the presence of performers. It's a really interesting symbiotic relationship. The audience completes the theatrical event. Theater, of course, is something that happens through time. It is something that is immediate. It happens in the present. It is not past. It is not present tense. It is not future tense. It happens in the moment. Richard Nelson, a playwright, put the theater experience in the following kind of definition that I think makes a lot of sense. He says, theater is a place where human beings can come together in the same room, in the same space, and in the same time to talk to each other or to listen. I think theater fills a profound void. Theater is always about human concerns, even when characters are non-human. Say, for example, you see a play about squirrels, or you see a play about hedgehogs and octopus. These characters still represent humans and human concerns. Theater is where we, in a highly charged political space, really come to confront ourselves. There's something way more dramatic about a naked body in a live temporal space as opposed to on film or on the internet or something like that. And it has to do with that live nature and that exchange in the space. The actors and the audiences do have separate roles most of the time. Your textbook talks about Augusto Boal, who was a Brazilian theater practitioner who went to Columbia University here in the United States and really blurred the actor-audience relationship in some really interesting ways. You can read about him on page 13 in your text. When we think about the group experience, we must think about the term willing suspension of disbelief. Coined by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the willing suspension of disbelief is our willingness to acknowledge that we are in a theater watching a story unfold and that the events that are happening aren't happening in real life. Say, for example, you have a character who dies of tuberculosis. You don't really think she dies every night on stage, and there's always a new one every day. We willingly suspend our disbelief of certain events in order to appreciate the experience all the more. Another example and term you should be familiar with is aesthetic distance. Now, aesthetic distance isn't a measurable distance. It is a concept for being able to take a step back and observing and appreciating the whole. People who don't have aesthetic distance might include your friend who plays bass guitar in a butt rock band in somebody's garage who thinks he's the next best thing ever. High school drama teachers have a hard time with aesthetic distance. Every parent who hangs artwork on the refrigerator because it's the best painting in the whole world isn't exerting necessarily a whole lot of aesthetic distance. Taking a step back and appreciating the whole and developing an aesthetic, proclivities, things you like, things you don't like, kind of help develop an aesthetic distance. I know personally, I have an aesthetic for skin and feathers. I like making messes on stage. I like flying bits of paper on stage. I'm more interested in theater that questions observable reality as opposed to playing in observable reality. Theater functions through symbols and metaphors. Things are rarely just as they seem, and there's usually something going on beneath the surface that's worth taking a look at. For example, we will be looking at A Streetcar Named Desire a little later this week and into next week, and one of the things I think the smart observer will notice right off the bat is that these characters are symbols, and there is a lot of symbolism within the play itself. Not only where Stanley and Stella live in Elysian fields, but also of Blanche Dubois and how we first meet her walking through smoke at the beginning of the play in a faded, tattered dress. These visual clues kind of help us understand the symbols and metaphors to which the play might be speaking towards. And those become more and more important as we start distinguishing between realistic theater and non-realistic theater. There is a really helpful chart on page 19 of your text that will really help explain the difference between realistic theater, which is theater that closely resembles everyday life. I recognize this place. That is a tree. That is a swimming pool. That's a kitchen. That's a car. That's an office building, as opposed to non-realistic theater. For example, Cirque du Soleil, or elements of theater that aren't quite like everyday life. For example, actors breaking out into unified song and dance, or characters who speak verse instead of everyday prose language. As you can see in some of the pictures that we're looking at in this slide, there's a lot of symbolism going on in all three images. So,